Hello students, welcome to Saurabh Sir's classes. Today we are going to discuss about geology and our first topic in this video will be sand dunes. So this is a very important topic in our subject. So basically what are sand dunes? Sand dunes are molds of sand. Here we have molds of sand. And how are these mounds of sand formed? We have many different ways of forming these sand mounds, but let us note down few of them here. So the first method of forming of these sand dunes is the steady supply of sand. Here we have steady supply of sand. So what this means, steady supply of sand means when we have a continuous supply of sand at a point, at a fixed place, then there is a collection of amount of sands. Here we have, since we are putting sand continuously at this point, then you will find that we obtain a sand structure like this, and there will be a mold of sand. So basically this is a type of sand dune. Now the second method of forming the sand dune is steady wind. Now, how steady wind helps us to make the sand dunes? When wind flows from, let this be an area, when wind is flowing in this way, as you know, winds always carry sand particles with it, small sand particles with it, and when wind flows over this area, it drops small sand particles here somewhere on this part, and slowly with these sand particles there is a huge collection of sand and there is formation of sand dunes. Now the third form of making sand dunes is the obstacles. Here we have some kinds of obstacles. Now you may think how some kind of obstacle may help making forming of sand dunes, and obstacle means rocks or fences. So these type of obstacles help us making sand dunes, because suppose we have a land here and we have fences here. Now these fences are very minute, so they slow, and here we have the wind carrying the sand dunes. So these fences force the winds to drop the sand particles over this area, because from these fences what happens is the winds speed slows down, as well as they are interrupted by these fences, so the sand particles are detached from the wind and falls on this area, and resultantly we form sand dunes. So basically these are the three main methods of forming sand dunes, three main ways of forming sand dunes. So here were the sand dunes forming. Now let us first discuss about the type of sand dunes. We have multiple number of sand dunes and various types of sand dunes, so let us discuss about them. So first sand dunes can be named as Birchen dunes. So what are Birchen dunes? Birchen dunes are basically formed in this type of shapes. They are facing the wind. Here we have they are facing the flow of the wind, and we have many such sand dunes over a single area. Now this is due to when wind is flowing in this manner and there is sand on the ground. So what happens is, due to these winds, the sand flows towards the direction of the winds and they get a shape like this. So the corners are towards the direction, and the middle portion, middle body portion remains at their position because it is very heavy and it cannot move from its position, but the corners are lighter and they move in the direction of the wind and forms a structure like this. So this was the first type of sand dunes. Now second sand dune is named as transverse sand dunes. We have transverse dunes. So transverse dunes are basically in this format. So let me draw a type of land here. Now the transverse sand dunes is something like this. Then we have a lower level, then we have another lower level, and like this. So basically what happens here is when wind, let me draw another diagram here to explain this properly. Yeah, so when wind flows towards this direction, what happens is it makes a sand level here, it makes a sand level in complete total of the land. So assume that we have sands on total of the land. Now what happens then when more wind flows? So if we have a huge amount of wind flowing, what happens is we have a double layer of sand up till this area, because sand, wind must not be in that flow or in that speed. So the first layer of wind creates a lesser amount of sand, the second it is a heavier amount of wind flowing, so we get a maximum amount of sand here. Then we have more wind flowing in this direction, which is again a lesser amount than the previous one, so we have some sand in this area. So you can see we have a maximum sand in the first part. Here we have a huge amount of sand because we have 3 layers of sand in this, then we have 2 layers of sand in this, then we have a single layer of sand in this. So basically a structure like this forms due to transverse dunes. So this was the second type. Now let's move on to the third type of dunes. So the third type of sand dunes is longitudinal dunes. We have longitudinal dunes. So these dunes are basically long straight dunes that form in the area of limited sand. Here we have, in previous you know that wind is continuously flowing. Here also we have continuously wind flowing, due to which the direction of the sand dunes have been changed. But here we have a limited amount of sand dunes. So a limited amount of wind and limited amount of sand particles in wind. So what happens is a structure like this forms, just a second, a structure like this forms in the land. So here we have, so this is basically one dune, and there are many such dunes like this. So you may assume this to be a pyramid structure, a long pyramid. So basically what happens here is when sand, when wind flows in this direction, it collects sand upward, so it forces sand upward and it makes a hill structure. But if we, as I said, we have a limited supply of wind, limited supply of sand. So what happens is when wind stops, when there is no more wind here, so if assume that wind has stopped, so what happens is the structure of the sand that has moved upward flows down in the opposite direction also. So again the wind flows in the opposite direction in this manner. So we have both sides falling sand, so the sand is falling on both sides and we form a structure like this. So this was the longitudinal dunes. Now fourthly we have parabolic dunes. So parabolic dunes are quite rare and it forms only in coastal areas. It is basically forming in coastal areas. Now what is this parabolic dunes? So let me draw a structure here. Now by the name parabola, here you can see, by the name parabola you can assume that the structure must be something like this and something like this, or maybe something like this. So basically this is a parabola. Here we also have, so basically these are the structures and this is the structure in which the sand dunes form. So when the air flows in this direction, let the wind flow in this direction. Now what happens if we have a sand dune in here, basically a huge amount of sand here? So what happens is when this wind flows, it is exactly opposite to our Birchen dunes. You must be remembering Birchen dunes when it were like this and the wind was flowing in this way. But here we have the wind flows exactly from the center of the sand collection. So what happens is the center portion is moved here. The center portion is moved, but the corners are fixed on this portion. So basically the structure becomes something like this. So this is the structure of the parabolic dunes, where the wind is flowing in this manner. So the sand particles have been pushed in the direction of the wind. So this was the parabolic dunes. Now the last dune, The last type of dune we study here is fifth, that is star dunes. So this is very often you will find the star dunes in forest areas and empty lands, and everywhere you can see star dunes are always visible. So star dunes basically are formed when wind direction is from everywhere. We don't have a fixed wind direction and wind is coming from everywhere towards a single land portion, that is variable wind directions. So this is variable wind directions. Now you see variable wind directions means if we have sand particles all over the land, what will happen is due to these variable winds pointing towards the center, these sand particles will make a star like structure in the center, that is it will form a hill type structure. You may have seen hills because here we have something like this structure is formed, a pyramid structure is formed, and viewed from the top it seems to be a star like structure, and so it is named as star dunes. So basically what happens here, as I said, of sand dunes in the center of the land, and due to the variable wind directions they form a star like structure and get on the top of each particles get on the top of each other, and it forms a hills like structure which seems to be a star in shape. So these were the 5 types of sand dunes. We have studied what is sand dunes, the reasons of forming of sand dunes, and different types of sand dunes in this video. So I will like to end this video here. You will find few more topics based on geology in our